The next step is to create the model for the application. The model represents the data. And in order to hold all of the files together that are the model, I'm going to create a folder in my project to hold them. So I'm going to click on the project folder, Sports Events, hold the Control key down, click, and indicate that I want a new group. Select the folder and rename it to Model. And now we have a group for holding the model files. But this doesn't yet represent a directory in my project. If we look at the full path, we'll see that it's in Sports Events, but there is no part of the path that indicates there is a directory called Model. I can create a directory to be associated with this group and turn it into a folder by selecting it, clicking on the folder, and then indicating I want to create a new folder, which I'm going to call Model. And then once the folder is created, I select it and choose it. Now if we look at the path for this group, it is to a directory called Model. And the Model directory is where I'm going to place all of the files. You'll see here currently that it's an empty folder, but as I add files, it's going to actually go into that directory. So the first file that I want to add to my model is my source of data, which is in the form of JavaScript object notation. I was given sports_events JSON, so I'm going to add that to the model. So with the model folder selected, I'm going to hold the Control key down and click on Model and say Add Files to Sports Events. I'm going to my desktop and select Sports Events JSON. If I select that file, you'll see that it is located on my desktop still. So evidently I missed something, and indeed I did. So I'm going to say delete from the project, but I'm only going to say remove the reference because I don't want to actually delete this file which is located on the desktop. So I'm going to click on Model again, Control click and say Add Files. And I am going to the desktop as I did before and select Sports Events JSON. But now I'm going to click on Options. And in the options, it has the choices that I need to make in order for the file to be copied into the project and be in the directory that I created for the model. So I'm going to check Copy Items if needed. And what that will do then is take this Sports Events JSON, which is on my desktop, and it's going to actually put it in the model directory because it's going to be copied if needed into the project. And so I'm going to say Add. Now if I select Sports Events JSON, you can see that it's located in the model folder and it's part of the project. And this is really important that when you add files to the project, that they be put in the project's directory structure so that when you make copies of this project, you send the project to somebody, you back up the project, that you have all of the parts. So Sports Events JSON. This is the source of data for the application. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and curly braces in JSON represent objects and brackets represent arrays. And objects are comprised of key value pairs. So we have one top level object. The first key is status and its value is OK. And then the next key is event and its value is an array. And then each of these curly brace bracketed blocks, comma separated, represent objects in the array. So events is the key that's pointing to an array. The first event is this object that has a key of sport and a value of basketball, a key of matchup, a value of Portland at Orlando, a key of date, and a value that shows it's February 23rd, 2017 at 1800 hours. So this is going to be the data for our application. This JSON file is going to be part of the application bundle, which means it's a file that will be included in the app when it is compiled. And what we're going to need to do with this JSON file is load it from the bundle, parse it, create individual instances of a struct or an object for each of the sport events, and then have an array of these events so that I can use this in my interface. So I'm going to load it, I'm going to parse it, and in the process of parsing it, I'm going to need to represent these as, again, as either structs or as objects. And in the struct or object, we're going to need properties. And the three properties that I need are sport, matchup, and date. Now, in JSON, each of these right now has values that are strings. When I load and parse this JSON, I don't want my sport to be a string. I'm actually going to create a sport enumeration so that basketball is one of the enumerated values, soccer is one of the enumerated values, baseball is an enumerated value, hockey is an enumerated value. So these are going to be enumerations. The matchup is going to be a string, and then the date, although it's a string now, once I load it and parse it, I want to turn these into Swift date objects. So this is the basis of my data, and it's currently in my model. The next steps are, again, going to be to create my enumerations, my structures or objects, my array of these entities, and then be able to have a way to call to load the JSON, parse it, and result in an array of entities that represent the sporting events.